And it seems like we're now live.
All right. Well, I'm just going to welcome everyone back to our True Play check-ins. And this is just our chance to share the conversations we're already having with our friends about the theory, the philosophy, and the practice of True Play and Anji Play.
And for more information about our work, we just encourage you to visit anjiplay.com, or you can check us out on social media, Twitter, Instagram, here on Facebook. And also during the conversation, we encourage you to leave comments or questions, and we'll do the best that we can to get to them. Yeah, we're sorry in advance if we don't get to all of them, but we will do our best to get to them in this conversation. And if not, we'll follow up after the conversation.
That's right. So let's just jump right in. This week for True Play Check-in number 11, we are so excited to be joined by Kim Moroney. Kim is Education Officer for Early Learning at the Catholic Schools Office in the Diocese of Maitland-Newcastle, and she's Conjoint Fellow in the School of Education at the University of Newcastle. Kim visited Anji County as a Brother Taylor Fellow in 2017. And for her research, she visited Anji, she visited Finland, and met with our good friend, the late Dr. David Whitebread at the University of Cambridge. So maybe before we get started, I just want to say, welcome, Kim. I want to just take a moment to remember Dr. Whitebread. We were just so honored to have him visit with us in Anji for our True Play check-in, or not True Play, for the True Play conference in 2019. Just a wonderful man, a joy to be with, and somebody who's so committed to children's joy and play, and the environments and the services that are offered to them. So I just want to take a moment to remember Dr. Whitebread. And with that, Kim, welcome. Yeah.
Firstly, I'd like to say thank you, Jesse and Krystina, for this wonderful opportunity to speak with you about Anji Play, about my experience in Anji, the work that I'm involved in here at the Catholic Schools Office in Maitland-Newcastle. I'm physically sitting in my office here in Newcastle and people who are not familiar with Newcastle is on the east coast of Australia. It's about 160 kilometres north of Sydney. And Newcastle is, where I'm sitting is on Awabakal land. So I want to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and pay respects to their elders past, present and future. And I'm proud to be sitting on Awabakal land and speaking to you today. Just on your point about our wonderful colleague and friend, Dr. David Whitebread, it was the most wonderful experience I had with the fellowship in 2017. I kind of did it in two parts. I spent time in Finland and Sweden in preschools and immersed myself there. And then I went back to London, and before I started the fellowship, I just thought, what if I just emailed Dr. David Whitebread and say one day, hello, I'm going to be in Cambridge. Would I be able to pop in and say hello? And you send something out like that and you never expect to get a response. And I did. And he said, sure, when will you be here? And we went to and fro, and I got to spend time with this man who had the most generous spirit. He was welcoming and he was lovely. He was just lovely, this man of knowledge and passion and research who would spend time with this person he never ever met. And we really connected. We both love cups of tea. So, and I took over from Australia a whole lot, like I'm meaning a big bag full of biscuits. So we met in his office and we talked about everything play and research about play. It was kind of like meeting one of my heroes in a way. And then I met the research team, and then he and I had lunch together and had more cups of tea and more biscuits. And it was just a wonderful experience. And fast forward to 2019, I had the opportunity of being in London again, and I saw that the Petal Institute with the Lego Foundation was having a day conference, and I went to that conference, and by chance he was sitting next to me, and he'd been to Anji, he'd returned from Anji, so we had more conversations, and he's like, yeah, I remember the cups of tea and the biscuits and we talked about our experience together, and then we were able to have this conversation about Anji. So I'm so pleased we've started our conversation today, remembering him and honouring him and his major contributions to play, to learning, to well-being for children across the globe.
Yeah, I remember Miss Chung, the founder of Anji Play, was nominated for the Lego Prize. And so Miss Chung and I traveled out to Billund in Denmark to be part of the Lego Ideas Conference. And I'd arrived and I'd helped Miss Chung get checked into her hotel room. And I came out and I saw this older gentleman at the front desk, and they couldn't find his room and they didn't really have an answer for him. And I just walked up to him. I said, how are you doing? My name's Jesse. You know, what's going on here? And I spent some time with him, and I went outside with him, and it was getting later at night. And we just spent some time talking and chatting. And I found out, you know, this was Dr. David Whitebread. And finally security came and found him his room. And then every morning during the conference, we'd sit together and have breakfast. And yeah, just such an open, engaged person. You know, we were having like full-on debates during breakfast, and you know, here is this man who is the leader of this institution at the University of Cambridge, and here I'm just this guy, and he's willing to really engage with me as a colleague, which I really just appreciated and still appreciate so much. So Kim, tell us more about your work, what brought you to Anji, what the outcome of that visit was, how it's part of what you do now.
Well, I've been a classroom teacher for a very long time now, and in different leadership positions in different schools through Catholic education in Maitland-Newcastle. But in 2016, I was seconded to the Catholic Schools Office to write a policy on early learning for all our schools. Now, backtrack a little bit, I'd already written a position paper a few years previous to that, and I put some recommendations forward, and it just sat there for a year, maybe a couple of years, and I thought, well, just see what happens. And then I was fortunate to be asked to come in here as a secondment. So around that time, 2016, 2017, writing the policy, in that time, I had a working party that I work with representatives from our schools, principals, teachers, people from the office, and I needed a critical friend. So I reached out to Professor John Fraschetti at the University of Newcastle, and he suggested the wonderful Associate Professor Yifang Li. So she became a critical friend on our working party, and then she and I would also have collegial conversations. And she was the first one that introduced me to Anji and Anji Play. And I remember sitting in her office. It's these moments that you never forget. Certain moments in your life that you have a moment and you think, wow, that conversation led to this, and this conversation led to that. And I remember having the conversation with her. We were at the Ourimbah campus, which is on the central coast of New South Wales, and she spoke to me about Anji, and I'm like, hang on a minute, what's wrong with me? How come I haven't heard of this? I'm researching play all the time. People, I think, see me coming and think, oh my gosh, she's going to start talking about play again, so they might double take around me. So she spoke to me about that. So I continued to write the policy and had the working party to support me. And then I applied for a fellowship through Catholic Schools New South Wales, the Brother John Taylor Fellowship. And in that fellowship, I thought, I need to go to places that deeply believe in the power of play for learning and well-being. I want to go to places in the world where I can learn more from, where I can immerse myself. And I thought, well, I have to go to Finland. I need to be in Finland. So I went to Finland and Sweden, and then I went to the Petal Institute to do that research background. And then I went to Angie in the April of 2017. Now, it's kind of little paths that, connections, but when I came back from Angie, it really influenced then because I was still writing the policy, and it was coming together. But I thought, no, my experiences in Finland, my experiences in Petal, and my experiences in Angie influenced the policy, which was launched in March of 2018. Then at the end of 2017, the Catholic Schools Office created a position, Education Officer Early Learning, and I applied for that, and I got the position, and I've been working in that role ever since. And so my role is to support schools. So kindergarten, the first year of primary school here in Australia, we're helping children and their families transition to school and supporting teachers and children and families in kindergarten, year 1 and year 2. And that entails a whole lot of things, from the importance of play, the environment, re-imaging indoor and outdoor environments, philosophy and pedagogy of early learning, building capacity with the wonderful teachers that are working in our system. And then I co-wrote with my friend and colleague, Dr. Kathy Harrison, an action research project called Successful Foundations. And that's kind of been consuming my working life a fair bit ever since. So it's, there's so, we're good talkers, the three of us, and there's so much to talk about.
So I just love to, so you had this chance to sort of visit different places around the world that had these play-based views of learning, systems in place for supporting that for young children. And then you come back and you write this policy, and this is finally published in March of 2018. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you saw in Angie, what you experienced there, how that impacted that policy? How would you say that the spirit of Angie Play, the spirit of True Play, is a part of that policy that you created?
So I guess in my life, I've had two major, powerful professional experiences that I think have shaped my image of the child, deepened my philosophy around childhood and play. I spent time, I think, in about 2009 in Reggio Emilia, and that has had a powerful impact on me and my understanding, my beliefs about children. And I must say the other most powerful experience has been my time in the preschools of Angie. And I think for me, it always comes back to the foundation for me is image or view of the child. That is the most fundamental, foundational concept that I think all of us have. It's what connects us. It's what drives us. It's what makes us passionate. Our deep understanding that these children are fully human and they come to us with complexities and capabilities and knowing and understanding and deep, rich thought. And we receive them when they come into our schools. And being in Angie deepened that tremendously for me. I saw people honouring the capabilities and children as citizens with the rich child, and not looking through a deficit approach of what they can't do, but all the things that they can do. I've been greatly influenced by a pedagogy or an understanding of deep listening of stepping back and listening, of observing, of wondering, of thinking. That's greatly influenced the work that we're doing here in Maitland-Newcastle, stepping back and deeply observing children and listening to them, listening to their stories. Reflection is been a huge influence from Angie. I would say reflection is one of the major influences, and we are really trying to evolve that, where with Successful Foundations and the concept of play reflection, that was introduced to the project because of Angie, and we're learning a lot. You know, it's evolving. Can we get better? Yeah, there's so much to think about and wonder about and reflect upon. But I feel so proud of the teachers that are embracing the project and deeply thinking about reflection and listening to the voice of the child and hearing their stories through play, and knowing that sometimes what we think we see is far more complex. Often, not sometimes, often. It has layers upon layers upon layers. And are we truly listening? Are we giving time and space to hear all those things? There's so much. There's the connection with families. There's the capacity building of teachers, the collaboration, the supporting one another. And all of that weaves and comes together through the foundation of love, deep, deep love, built in relationships, of knowing the child, and equally the child knowing us as fully human, as our authentic self. And I think that's the greatest gift we can give children, to be fully and authentically who we are. That's the gift that we are here to give, to be ourselves. So there are so many things that Angie has given me, the gift that it has given me, and I just feel I'm trying to, and it's a big responsibility to go somewhere when it's not your culture. You're a visitor. You're trying to respectfully listen, and I used to, what am I seeing? But is that what I'm really seeing? And then come back and talk about it. So it's a big responsibility that I carry with me, and I try to do so respectfully.
And just this, I mean, there's this lovely kind of quality of sort of giving children that grace to be who they are, and to be present, to see that and let it challenge our assumptions about what they're capable of. You know, Ms. Chung talks about sort of this idea that if we have ideas about what children should be doing, and we give them environments that kind of push them towards what we want them to do, then we're really just seeing sort of a reflection of ourselves. We're not seeing that child for who they truly are. So just this idea of discovering sort of this true child sounds like it's a powerful part of what you're considering in your work. And yeah, I mean, that idea of love, I think it's really interesting for us. You know, we get people reaching out to us from, you know, Buddhist schools and Jewish schools, and you know, and obviously you're working within the diocese, so you're working with Catholic schools. It's really interesting to think how that idea of love, I think, really, I'm always careful about calling things universal, but there is something to be said for the love that we all want to provide children with. I guess my question would be, and I have another question that kind of comes from this, which is that it can be hard to step back. It can be hard to have your assumptions challenged, especially, you know, you're working in the primary world, so kindergarten, but I'm also hearing first and second grade of primary school. What has it been like for the teachers to step back? How has it been for you to kind of provide them that space to evolve in their thinking about children?
It's challenging. It's challenging for teachers because in the prior to school years, we have a national framework, the Early Years Learning Framework, which is based on play and interests of children. And once children step over the threshold and come into schools, there is a curriculum. And in the curriculum, there are outcomes, there is content. And I can see in education changing, and it's changing in different ways. I can see the concept of play becoming more powerful for people, but I can also see that in education, the demands on the teacher are becoming greater, and there's this expectation to push down curriculum. I'm not saying it's coming from my workplace. I'm saying in general, often in the Western world, there's this pressure to achieve a sense of a culture of achievement. And I want us to have a culture of thinking. I worry that we're caught up in this culture of getting children to achieve. And what does that really mean anyway? Achieve in literacy, achieve in numeracy, achieve in creativity, achieve in kindness. What does that mean? So our teachers are very, I feel, in general terms, across our nation, across maybe the globe, they feel that they've got a lot of things to do. And it's like, well, how do I do that? And because there's, the drive for reading and writing at a young age, independently reading and writing, often it's seen as, well, we don't have time for play because we've got all these other things to do. But I feel so fortunate to be working in a system that says, no, we recognise play. It's part of our policy. It's system direction. And we need that to be there. We want it to be there. It's the child's right to have it there. And teachers have the right to choose their pedagogy. And it's meaningful. And so there's this teachers to step back then because they're used to intervening, or not even intervening, engaging. Having, a child might be playing, and then, there's this, at the beginning it was like, well, do I talk to them about what they're doing? Because I really need to know what they're doing, because we've got to achieve outcomes, and we've got content to cover, and I've got this much time of the day. And what's wonderful about the project that we've been doing at the first 5 weeks of school, where children come in for transition and it's play, is that we haven't aligned it to outcomes. It's not aligned, and I'm really strong in making sure it's not. We think about learning dispositions of the curiosity and creativity and problem solving. We can see all of that, but we're saying no to checking off checklists about literacy and numeracy, and and stepping back. So it has its challenges, because some teachers feel very worried that I was reading through some, we've just done some surveys for the Successful Foundation teachers that are in the project, and reading through the surveys, and some of them are still worried about, especially not so much the teachers that have been in the project for a couple of years now, but there's one or two that are worried about, oh my goodness, I've still got a lot to get done, and I feel like I've got to be, what am I doing stepping back? I really need to step in because I need to find out what they're doing. But that's only a couple. The teachers are really believing in that. We've talked about stepping back, and they're amazed at what they can see. We're constantly surprised, and we shouldn't be. I don't know why we're surprised, but we're amazed at the thinking and the wondering and the inquiry and the trial and error of children when they're playing. And then we're seeing empathy and love and joy. So teachers are embracing that. And as a system, we're saying this is crucially important. So it's evolving. And there are challenges, certainly. There are definitely challenges on teacher level, leadership level, in my role. Sometimes I've talked to colleagues, my wonderful colleagues that I work with, especially early learning colleagues from around the state. And we say sometimes it's like I put on my armour and I come on, where we're going in there and we're continually talking about the benefits of play.
So what's been most successful in helping teachers step back? Like what's worked for you?
I think one of the most successful things is being in classrooms alongside of the teachers. It's building capacity with the teachers and walking alongside of them. Now, in the first year of the project, I had my wonderful colleague and friend, Dr. Kathy Harrison, and we worked on this together. She lives in Sydney and I'm the practitioner here. So I was going from school to school and being in the space with the teachers and them, I guess, seeing me observe children and me writing up some of the things that I would see. And we do the same. We take photos, we take videos, we go back and we reflect, we share, we collaborate. Currently now I have the two wonderful project officers working alongside of me, 2 kindergarten teachers that have been practitioners with Successful Foundations. And so Bridie and Taylor, who I acknowledge their wonderful contributions to the project, they're also now going into schools with me and we work alongside the teachers, stepping back, observing play and helping teachers maybe see some things that they don't know that they're seeing, and us taking notes, writing on post-its, taking photos, coming back, and then deeply listening to the child's voice in the play. I think the teachers are becoming the experts. They're the researchers alongside of the children. And what's been interesting about Successful Foundations, I'm finding it's not just about, and Kathy wrote, Dr. Kathy Harrison wrote a report about Successful Foundations in its trial year. And we both discussed the concept, it's not just about image of the child, it's about image of the teacher. And it's a culture of trust in teachers. And I'm very proud of that. Teachers are trusted in Anji. They're trusted to be with children, to create support environments that, because back to your point, Jessie, the image of the child changes all our decisions of what we do, including what our environments look like. And the environments reflect what we value. And if we have all of that trust, which I saw in Anji, which we know that there's that climate of trust with the conversations around Finland, a conversation around responsibility and trust rather than accountability. We are working with that here, and the teachers are trusted and the children are trusted. And therefore that stepping back, if we trust, becomes easier over time. It's challenging to begin with, and I remember reading the challenges of Miss Chung and being inspired by her, because she did put on that armor and she kept fighting. She kept looking for solutions to the problems, and she's inspiring because she had problems. Like she had parents saying, what's going on here? And she worked out ways to solve the problems. This clever, brilliant mind thinking, I keep putting on my armor. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to be my true authentic self. I'm going to support teachers and families and children. And I find that inspirational. And I hope that's what we're creating, a climate of trust here in our schools.
I mean, I think it's a climate of trust that you're modeling, right? From the beginning, like you're in the classroom, you're giving them permission to do the stepping back, which is in turn kind of reprofessionalizing them in some ways. I know earlier you talked about academics being pushed down. And so often when that happens, I feel like teachers feel disempowered. They don't feel like they're in charge of like anything really, that they're just kind of like taking orders from somebody else and implementing them in the classroom. And I think that what you're describing is like empowering teachers in a way that they are the experts and they're the researchers. They don't need to look to outside sources on like how to work with the children in their classrooms, because just by doing that deep observation and that conversation and reflection with one another, you're able to provide the children with whatever they need to thrive in that space. That's really inspiring, Kim.
I feel inspired when we have days together, and I walk away inspired by the teachers, and that it's interesting. You feel like you build, as a teacher builds deep relationships with children. I feel like I've developed deep relationships with the teachers, who I feel across our schools, especially that I'm working deeply with the kindergarten teachers at this point in time. You are in relationship with them, and they become important to you. You want to support them in any way you can. Like anything, it's demanding, and I would like to be in schools. You know, if I'm at one school and I think I need to go to the other school and I need to get to this school, but I think early learning will continue to grow and I hope thrive in our schools, because you think, okay, well, this is happening in kindergarten and we've still got more schools to bring into the project, but then what happens in year one? What happens in year two? That transition between the years is also very important. So sometimes you feel like there's this urgency of shouting from the rooftops, and that concept of, I remember that having a conversation about play revolution, and I always have, there's just here the word revolution, because we want to stir up emotions, and we want to support one another, and we want to say there's different ways of being and we can be part of that.
Well, I think that, you bring up this idea of love, of safety, really, and trust. I mean, how I think in our conception of love involves trust, being trusted, as you said, being seen, being heard. And I think that when you have that safety, you can take risks. And I think that, revolutions are always pretty risky. And you talk about kind of wearing this armor, that strength that it takes to come into that fight for children, that fight for teachers and what their needs are, and thinking about safety as being sort of responsive. And I think you're bringing up, in Ms. Chung's early experiences when she was talking to parents, right? Parents have this need for safety for their child, both safety physically, but also, okay, the future is uncertain, but I know they need to be employed and I want them to learn, and school's about learning. And so she was responding to those needs, right? She was saying, okay, well, we're not focused on numeracy or literacy, but I'm going to show you all this incredible stuff that's happening. So I think, again, that love of responding to people where they are, what is your need? If you're a teacher, how can I be with you in that space so that you are safe enough to take that risk in stepping back, so you can push down your teaching reflex and, build your listening reflex.
Yeah.
And so I think that, in a lot of the work that we do and a lot of the work that we think about when we're working with early childhood programs is, how do you, at the administrative level, create leadership that allows teachers to step back so that they feel safe in taking that little bit of risk of questioning assumptions, of thinking, well, do I really need to ask a question while a child's playing? Like, is it really okay for me to close my mouth and put my hands down? Is the child going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? Is like the sort of project of education going to be okay if I step back for a moment? So I think that, yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of resources, internal resources, I think, in your position, in the teacher's position, in the administrator's position. And part of that, like you're saying, is clearing out a lot of other stuff. I mean, I think another thing that we do when we go into a program, we say like, okay, write down, sometimes we do is even, I used to be a competitive rower, and before we'd row in a race, we'd sit there and we'd visualize the entire race. And then we go out. Sometimes we ask teachers to just sit down and visualize their entire day. We walk by minute, and we write down like, okay, then there's this transition, then we do that. And we look and say, well, how much of this can we not do? Or how much of this is coming from what a child's needs are? And so I think part of that safety is also, like you were saying, clearing out all those other things that we're expecting teachers to do, all those other pressures. And again, that's where people in your position, where administrators can say, like, for the next X amount of time, don't do any of that. Like, just watch, just listen, just be there. And that's such a gift. And again, it's a gift of trust, right? Because you're trusting that that's going to be okay. You're trusting that the teacher will see things that are important to them in their role as educators. And so I just want to acknowledge the work you're doing, because I know that's not easy to have those resources internally, right? That strength, that armor, if you will, to provide that kind of safety for others to take those risks.
It's interesting too, because in that first year of trialing successful foundations and talking to the teachers, and they're one of me and Kathy would come from Sydney, and we'd have the day together with, there were 11 schools in the first cohort 1. And what I do is, we'd have different things in the day and talk and wonder about that. I would often give examples to begin with of my time in Anji and showing them things that I saw by stepping back. And then we'd use examples about the power of the reflection in thinking I saw something, but then knowing that it was something different. And now what's happening is we've got our own so many deep, rich examples, and we're sharing that amongst ourselves. And we're using, I often do, if I'm presenting, I might show an image of something, a teacher with play sharing in Anji, and then I'll show all these images of that happening across our schools. And then the same with play stories. To begin with, I would show images of the stories from Anji. Now I'm showing images here. Children have played journals. The documentation, the children's voice through their documentation is on the walls, respectfully showing their wonderings and their research. So everything continues to evolve and grow deeper. It's fascinating to see things are changing, and it's hopeful and it's joyful. There's so much joy there. The joy is in the classroom with the children, or outdoors with the children, and we're trying to get outdoors more and more. And sometimes that, of course, brings challenges in different contexts and different settings, with the different contexts of our schools and different environments. And the concept of re-imaging indoor and outdoor environments. What do we value in our room? What's it saying about space, about flow, about sustainability? We're having these conversations, and I think so many people are. I know people across the state of New South Wales, across Australia, internationally. We are a community, and we're there to support one another. And I feel supported by, you know, True Play Check-In. I feel supported by the Anti-Play newsletter. I feel supported when I'm always listening to other people in different contexts and thinking, wow, that person's doing amazing work, and I feel inspired by them.
I think for us, you know, a big commitment, or I think maybe a takeaway that we've had from thinking about the work that's happening in Anji, the work that Ms. Chung's doing, because we're, you know, Krystina and I are always actively reflecting together about the work we're doing with teachers, is just where's the simple, like, if it's not clear and it's not simple, then we're going to get further and further away from listening to children, because that's a clear, specific sort of remit, right? If we're getting way beyond that, then we need to recenter back on the child's experience. We need to recenter ourselves, if we're in an administrative position, what the teacher's experience is, what they're saying, they're hearing. I think one of the biggest challenges, I'm going to say the biggest challenge, but one of the challenges we face is that once you step back, there can be a desire to take what you've seen immediately and translate that into an activity or something that's immediately responding to what the child's doing, to, again, it's kind of like the half step back. It's like the stepping back to get just enough information that you think you know what the children want, and then moving on with an activity based on that. And I think there's this subtle distinction, because in Anji, teachers do support children in play, but it comes after a much longer process of, like you're saying, really that information gathering, where a play story where a child is drawing a picture of their play every day, the only words on the back of that play story are the child's words, right? In play sharing, it's the child describing their insights. It's not the teacher guiding them to a particular insight. And so I think once you get that stepping back in play, once you start challenging those assumptions, I think the next big challenge is, how do you step back even, not even further, but how do you give yourself even more time with what you're hearing and seeing, and not kind of jump towards, okay, how do I productively sort of operationalize this information about children to, again, meet our own sort of outcomes, you know, the outcomes that we're so often chasing.
It is very challenging, Jesse, and it's so very challenging in a school context, because we have teachers, principals have demands of a syllabus, of a curriculum, and often things are in little pockets, key learning areas. You know, you've got your English and mathematics, and then there's science, and then there's creative arts, and each having outcomes and each having content. And how do we integrate, and how do we weave thoughts and processes together? And in schools there's timetables, you know, 2 hours of English, 1 hour of mathematics. You know, it's very challenging in a school context. And when writing the policy, I had to, when I applied for the fellowship, my paper, what I pitched it, I called it the academia of play. Do I think morally, ethically, that's a title that I deeply believe in? Probably not, but I thought it would attract attention, and I thought it might help me to have a voice to talk about play. And it helped, and that's what my research, my report's about. When it comes to writing the policy, it's getting your foot in the door and providing the research, which copious amounts of research around the world, especially the research of neuroscience, which is supporting us. But when I had to think about the policy and putting play in the policy, I remember someone saying to me, writing the policy, do you need to maybe write inquiry learning, or do you think you should write play? And I'm like, play, we're writing play, and not play-based learning, play.
Those are very different.
They're very different. But in a school context, it's kind of like you've got to be, we talk about that self-determined play that is happening in Angie. Definitely self-determined play. Is that fully, is there some sort of a compromise sometime with, we talk about play as a pedagogy, and that's the way I can get play discussed in a school context. So it's almost like we think about play as the right of the teacher to choose that as a pedagogy to access curriculum. But then there's the self-determined play, which I believe is true play. So sometimes it's okay, what compromises do you have to make to get your foot in the door and get this on the table and have conversation? But then how can we evolve and have deeper understanding? And so it's very challenging in the school context. And I deeply admire and value teachers. The teachers are giving all of themselves to do what is best for children. And I always particularly shout out to kindergarten teachers, the teachers, that first year of primary school, because they're setting the culture and the relationships for the future, and they're bringing from the prior into the present. They are sometimes deeply undervalued in systems. And I just think they're incredible, giving people who are trying to do their best with their philosophy and their beliefs, and then with the demands of schoolification.
Yeah. And I think there's this kind of tension and this irony in some sense, which is that sometimes I think the problem isn't assessment as a thing, but it's just the assessments aren't good enough, or they're not responsive enough, or they're almost underestimating children. So I think I'm thinking about, okay, you have a 6-year-old and they have this rich conversation and play, and you're assessing based on sight words, when what you're hearing is the use of metaphor and these incredible narrative structures, and children having conversations about language, like not just using language, but talking about the use of language. So sometimes I think that we're really missing a type of learning or a content of learning that we would think of as maybe at a graduate level. And that sounds like an exaggeration. I know people talk about like babies are geniuses or kids are geniuses, and there's kind of this laugh like, ha ha ha, yeah, they're doing something really interesting. Look at that thing that they did. But oftentimes these really deep conversations, these really profound explorations of meaning and of language, that I think of as like deep literacy skills, the ability to tell a story, the ability to critically analyze a statement, the use of rich language. If we're just looking for, oh, can they spell the, is there snap word there? You're missing out on something. And so maybe part of it is using assessments that look for higher order abilities to make that convincing argument that you're saying, and that we also know you need to make in order to get people to change, how they allocate resources, what they're expecting of children, what they're expecting of teachers. Like both not looking at children from a deficit model, but maybe even looking beyond what we think of as kind of the ceiling of children's abilities.
Yeah, and I know that I probably shared this story already, but like when I was in a 4-year-old class in Anji, I was watching play sharing, and the children were very into it and discussing something, and I don't speak Chinese, so I don't know exactly what they were saying. So I was relying on my interpreter, and she's like, what are they talking about? Come on, like it's such a heated debate. I want to know. And she's like, I don't know the words in English. Hold on a second. And so she looks it up, and there are these really complex physics like concepts. And so, okay, like a kindergarten curriculum maybe talks about, oh, is this thing alive? Is this, something that,
living things
like that. Like these 4-year-olds were talking about physics, like those were far beyond, or they were just different, like concepts that you would never think that children would be able to grasp, but in their self-determined play, they're able to really explore things on a different level. And and in a way that makes sense. And it's not like because, oh, it's like this chapter that, or like that we have to study to learn more about this particular thing. It's like this deep intrinsic motivation to learn about how the world works and how different materials in their world impact, you know, their curiosities and their just like hypotheses.
Yeah. And how do we see children like that if we don't give them the time and the space to understand all their richness and their capabilities? You know, if we don't truly know them, how can we support them in their learning and well-being? And, you know, sometimes things are totally dumbed down. These children are coming to us from different cultures and different influences and different environments, and they're teaching us. If we just listen, we will learn. And there's example after example. You know, I hear what you're saying, Krystina. You know, I've seen a child immersed building solar panels for a house out of boxes, and the perseverance to the solar panels kept falling down, and he was trying to work out a way to get the solar panels on this house that he was building because he needed energy from the sun for the family to live in the house. There is, you know, I've seen the child finding Kenya on the map and saying, my family's from Kenya, and my mum and dad came to Australia because it's the best country for us. You know, I've got this image behind me, one of the teachers shared it. It came from last year's play where when Australia was suffered such huge bushfires, and the children developed a koala hospital in their play space, and this child caring and looking after a koala and showing empathy and love and demonstrating knowledge of what's happening in our nation at the time, and being able to feel security and comfort in expressing that through play. It's all there if we just stop. If we look and if we listen, we step back, we reflect, and we think about our environments and all our contexts are individual. We're not saying pick up Angie and you're in Angie school and you do that. No, we're here in Australia and we've got our own complexities and our own culture and our own context, but can we be totally inspired? Can we work in collaboration? Can we think about, you know, the fundamentals of what we're trying to do, and do we have that deep philosophy? Yeah, we need to keep strengthening that.
Thank you so much. I think love, reflection, trust, safety. What a lovely place to end our conversation. So Kim Moroney, Education Officer in Early Learning for the Catholic Schools Office in the Diocese of Maitland-Newcastle. I just want to thank you again so much for sharing your time, your experience, your important work with us. We just appreciate it so much.
And I would like to thank you both. Thank you for being fierce advocates. My love and thanks to Ms. Chung and all the people involved in Angie, and everyone from across the world who has a deep belief in the child and childhood and play and relationships. And we're all connected. So it's been a true honor to speak with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.